9th of June, Yakutsk, Magan, Tomtor. Our intentions at an early start were thwarted as breakfast of cucumber and tomato followed by frankfurter was not available until 08:15 hours. On arrival at the airport, it was confirmed that we would be following the northerly route as there was no hope of fuel to the south. This new itinerary takes us over some of the most desolate areas of Russia, not ideal chipmunk flying terrain. After a final chat for the local TV station, we popped across to Magan, 7 minutes flying time away, to replenish our tanks. Once the semi-wild ponies had been chased away from the runway, we landed and taxied to a stony, sandy dispersal for fuel. Then followed 3 hours of hassle at the decaying administration block, which looked as if no maintenance had been done since the initial commissioning of the building some 40 years ago. The initial charge of 6 million rubles demanded for air navigation was knocked down to a more reasonable 2,074,000, plus an additional 3 million for chipmunk fuel, parking, security, pony chasing, etc., which we paid rapidly as it is almost 1500 hours and the prospect of spending another night in Yakutsk has lost its appeal. By this time of day, thunderstorms had begun to develop, but with a bolt-hole airfield at Yakutsk, halfway along route, we were happy to continue. Tomtor, the most desolate and primitive of airfields encountered to date, had a 20-knot crosswind when we arrived after 4 hours flight over the most rugged of terrain, but safe landings were made on the rocky scree strip. Most of the 600 inhabitants of the settlement had turned out to greet us on arrival, and the sheer poverty and lack of purpose had permeated through the whole place. Surprisingly, a 405-litre drum of B-91 had been pre-positioned for our arrival, and we never did find out why or how it got there. Payment of the bills was quickly completed, and we sheltered in the transport from the thousands of voracious mosquitoes before the short journey to the accommodation. Tomtor has the dubious distinction of being the coldest place on the inhabited earth, having a record low temperature of minus 72 degrees Celsius, minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit. A large monument to this fact sits beside another commemorating the death of an AN-24 crew who perished in vile winter weather whilst attempting to bring in supplies to relieve a famine some years ago. When temperatures approach this record low level, it is impossible to venture out into the elements without risk of frozen lungs and eyes, and the locals do not even attempt it. We were accommodated in a wooden barrack, 3 to a room, with 1 loo and a wash basin for the whole block. The town generator can only be ran for 6 hours each day because of the lack of fuel, but this is no problem as at over 62 degrees north we were in permanent natural daylight. Apart from our salad frankfurter breakfast, we had only eaten a Yorkie bar, and we had no prospect of food here. It wasn't that the people would not sell us any, the fact was that there just was none to spare from their meagre store. The poor peasant inhabitants of this settlement lived a harsh, hand-to-mouth existence, relying on home-grown produce, hunting and haphazard air delivery service, which was mostly very expensive and, in any case, beyond their budget. Eventually we were given a long loaf of brown-black bread and a small pat of butter, which we sliced into 6 equal 2-inch doorstops. Black bread never tasted so good when washed down with purified water flavoured with orange powder to disguise the taste. We did some route planning before turning in for the night. The GPS indicates only 1,135 miles to Provendia Bay, but that is straight line track and we're heading towards the northeast.